Welcome to this week's episode of Arkansas Wildlife. Fall is officially here. There's a chill in the air finally, and we're going to be talking about a lot of hunting and fishing adventures this fall. One thing a lot of folks will be doing is chasing squirrels with squirrel dogs. This week we're headed up to the Fred Berry Conservation Education Center on Crooked Creek to tag along on a squirrel dog field trial. The deer season is upon us, so a little later in the show, we're going to give you an update on chronic wasting disease in the natural state and see how the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission is implementing some changes to try to manage and control this serious disease to deer and elk. But first, we're going to have a little fun with some Canada geese. Arkansas has a robust population of what we call often resident geese, and each year our biologists go out and ban some of those geese to get a better understanding of that population. All that and this week's winner of a free hunting and fishing license right after this break.
Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by Academy Sports and Outdoors. For all, for less. If you've spent much time in the outdoors in Arkansas, there's a high probability you've encountered Canada geese. But just exactly how many of these birds live in the state and where? Questions like that are the reason Arkansas Game and Fish waterfowl biologist Luke Naylor and his team are hitting the water today. But to count these geese, you first have to catch them.
Yeah, these Canada Goose Roundups, which we don't round them up and take them anywhere, but we do round them up. Something unique to waterfowl is that they have a molt wherein they lose all their flight feathers. So they do have this period of over a month where they're flightless. We take advantage of that opportunity to capture these birds temporarily, to place bans on them.
After years of trial and error, they've come up with a unique and effective way to round up the geese: radio-controlled boats.
I don't know who it was who first tried this amongst my counterparts throughout the flyways, but we all got to talking here several years ago at a meeting and started thinking about the idea of radio-controlled boats for rounding up geese. I would say one of the most effective tools for facilitating goose roundup that we've seen in a while. Geese, for whatever reason, they absolutely hate these radio-controlled boats. And so you put one of those in the water and start running at them, and they want to get the other direction really, really fast. Even more so than a big 16-foot John boat. You think it would be opposite, but John boats, I don't know if it's because they see a lot of traffic from fishermen all the time on some of these places. They're kind of desensitized to it, but these little RC boats, they hate them. It is a little bit of fun to drive them.
How it comes together right here, Scotty. Sound professional for us.
I can't lie. We've never, yes, I have been involved in goose banding operations where we had losses and some of the boats did not make it back, well, at least intact. I'm trying to think back. There may have been one that just was a complete loss over the years. Mostly it's just some level of damage. You have to be real careful about who you give the controller to. We've offended, we've hurt a lot of feelings over the years, but I'm comfortable with it. You have to get at least an unofficial sign-off from the co-coordinators here to be able to operate one of the RC boats, because it's gone pretty bad when we've handed them out to people that aren't prepared for the responsibility.
But make no mistake about it, while it may look like fun and games, these biologists are serious about the collection of data for these birds. Banding is the preferred method with most waterfowl.
We ban Canada geese because there's really no other way to monitor their populations. So with ducks, lots of folks are familiar with the annual breeding population and habitat survey. where we get a good estimate of duck numbers throughout really the vast majority of the breeding grounds each year. We don't have anything like that for Canada geese, largely because they're so scattered out across the country now. We use banding because it's a whole lot, we think, a lot more efficient in the long run for the relatively small goose populations we have, to be able to go out and just work for 4 or 5 days a year and band a couple thousand geese, and it gets us really good population demographic information.
The data collected from these bands will help determine the population of the birds in Arkansas, as well as their movements. But this method does require the help of hunters.
It doesn't work unless hunters participate. It really is one of the very first citizen science projects in wildlife management, in my opinion. It's been going on for years and years, and we can band all the birds we want to. But if somebody doesn't return those, if a hunter doesn't report an encounter when they shoot one of those banded birds, we really don't have much data. We just have on a piece of paper that we put this band on a bird and let it go on this particular day. So it's really, really important to get that information back. It's not something where we're generating population estimates every year in some sort of real-time fashion, not like the annual duck surveys. It's more that we can, every year, we can keep track of harvest rates, survival rates, and we can look at movements of birds in general. And then every few years or so, you can kind of more formally take a step back and calculate population indices from banding data.
85 is an adult male.
The work of these biologists helps wildlife managers set seasons. In Arkansas, those hunting opportunities take place in September and again November through January.
Most of those opportunities are targeted at what we call temperate breeding Canada geese now. Not truly residents, they do move around a lot. Of course, a lot of them do not move very far, but they do have some movements. We call them temperate breeding Canada geese. That's in contrast to Arctic nesting Canada geese or subarctic nesting Canada geese. We used to have in Arkansas a lot more. Really, we've lost that migratory connection over the years. Geese in general are wintering a lot farther north than they used to. And in Arkansas, it's over 95% of Canada geese harvested in Arkansas are temperate breeding Canada geese. It's actually Arkansas hatched birds, Arkansas banded birds who are being taken by hunters here.
Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by the Arkansas Game and Fish Foundation. Support wildlife and conservation education in the natural state. Become a member today. A squirrel dog owner summed up his obsession this way: squirrel dogs are like potato chips. No one can have just one. But dogs that tree squirrels are not a dime a dozen. They are valuable hunting tools, as well as beloved family members. On a clear 25-degree January morning near Crooked Creek in Marion County, David Chronister of Piney Creek Squirrel Hunters Association prepared for a squirrel dog competition before the sun rose.
You turn your dogs loose and then they go out there, the dogs tries to find a squirrel. If you've never squirrel hunted, find somebody that got a dog and go out there and enjoy it.
When tracking or treeing squirrels, there are two primary squirrel dog breeds.
We're talking about cur dogs and feist dogs. A cur's a little bigger than a feist, and a lot of people like a little dog, which would be a feist or something like that, and a lot of people like cur dogs. A dog can use its nose and its sight both, its hearing, you know, I mean, it's got to have all three, but it's really got to use its nose and its eyes. That dog has to work to find that squirrel a lot of times. Sometimes it don't, but a lot of times a dog has to really work to get that squirrel found, to tree that, you know, to tree the squirrel.
Field trials usually are a mix of serious scorekeeping and unbridled fun.
All right, when the dog's treed, if you see the squirrel, the first dog trees gets 125 plus points. Second dog gets 75, and the third dog gets 50.
As others arrived at base camp at the Fred Berry Conservation Education Center on Crooked Creek, conversation began and teams formed. Scott and Si were coupled with Delvin Freeman and his dog, Trigger, along with Cody Branyon and his dog, Lexi.
Ready to go.
Si's ready.
I hear a dog barking. I do too. That's Trigger. Is he drinking? Sounds like it.
15 minutes into the morning walk, Trigger treed a squirrel, and Si soon joined him. Scores were recorded, but this was a test to see how well some of the younger and inexperienced dogs handled themselves, and to introduce some of their owners to competition.
Oh yeah, I see it now. Yeah, we see it, Delvin. That's good.
Trigger met all the criteria for treeing a squirrel and was awarded points according to the National Kennel Club standards.
Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. We'll get another one. Come on.
Sometimes squirrels aren't the only wildlife that gets treed.
What the hell? There's something in that. Making a noise. Maybe a coon, you know what? Sounds like.
That's what cuts out.
Expecting that today, we
No. Some other dogs I've got have treed bears before.
Yeah.
But this is the first for him, and I know he would do it because of his parents.
Right.
You know, his
Yeah.
parents would tree about anything in a fly. Anyway, well, let's move on, see if we can't get a squirrel on the
I tell
outside.
him up in here the timber gets a little bit better.
The dogs didn't follow a course during the 2-hour competition. They zigzagged through the dense, rocky woods, enjoying every minute, sniffing and barking as they went. By the time the field trial ended, Trigger was the only dog to tree a squirrel out of the 3 teams. In this event, there were little more than bragging rights at stake. But even when bigger competitions offer trophies or other prizes, for dedicated dog handlers such as these guys, the biggest reward is simply watching your dogs work, using their instincts and training to make a good day in the woods even better. Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by Arkansas's own PK Grills, maker of the new PK 360, the best and last grill you'll ever buy. As the natural state enters its second deer season since the detection of chronic wasting disease, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission continues to take actions to manage the disease and gain a better understanding of it. Since routine testing detected the disease in a cow elk in Newton County in October 2015, the disease has been found in a total of 216 animals, 209 whitetails and 7 elk in 6 additional counties. Last year, the Commission established a 10-county CWD management zone. Although the disease has been found in just 7 counties, Johnson, Logan, and Yell counties were included because of proximity to positive CWD cases. This year, Van Buren County was added to the CWD zone after a positive elk was harvested just across the county line in Searcy County. One of the most important regulations for the CWD zone prohibits the movement of any portion of a deer or elk from the CWD zone to other parts of the state. There's an exception for deboned meat and finished taxidermy products.
Each one of the regulations that the Commission passed, we viewed them as strategies. Strategies to help us reach our goals. And we have 2 goals associated with chronic wasting disease management. One of them is to minimize the spread of the disease. We want to contain it inside the management area. And then also the second goal is to minimize the amplification of the disease, is do not amplify it in those already established areas.
Complete regulations, as well as an extensive fact sheet about CWD, are available online at arkansascwd.com. In addition to implementing regulations to manage CWD, the Game and Fish Commission also is tackling the disease through research. Once the initial response and sampling efforts were completed, one of the Commission's next steps was establishing a new research division, which included the hiring of the Commission's first state wildlife veterinarian, Dr. Jen Ballard.
After the detection of chronic wasting disease, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission brought in a team of experts to really help guide the management and response to the disease. And one of the things that that team of experts strongly recommended is that we have a greater presence in doing chronic wasting disease research and just a variety of research, because we know that that helps support our mission as a wildlife and fisheries management agency. And so from that came the new Research, Evaluation, and Compliance Division. There's already a lot of research happening around the agency, and so we're just helping to do more research and helping some of our biologists do their research better, or get new ideas, or make sure they're using the absolute, cutting-edge methods that we can be using to get the best available information. I assist the Commission, its fisheries and its wildlife management divisions, in managing our fish and wildlife resources for overall population health. So instead of focusing on individual animal health, we try to make sure that we're managing in such a way that the populations are healthy and sustainable.
That includes all kinds of work, such as these surgeries to implant tracking devices in American eels. But because CWD poses such a serious risk to the state's deer and elk populations, Ballard spends a lot of time working with Commission biologists to manage CWD in Arkansas.
I help the Wildlife Management Division with several aspects of chronic wasting disease management. I help them develop biosecurity protocols to make sure that we're handling everything appropriately. We work on the regulations together so that we try to come up with regulations that reflect the best possible management of the disease. And then I also help direct some of the research projects, identifying some of the questions we need answered to better manage the disease, and then looking for researchers to collaborate with to make those projects happen.
One ongoing project is looking into genetics as a way of better understanding disease pathways.
You can look at how the populations subdivide themselves, and by understanding how genes flow between populations, you can get an estimate of how you would expect disease to flow or move between populations, and that helps us to better manage our populations, help manage chronic wasting disease, and it also tells us, the overall relatedness of the individuals that are affected, so we may be able to identify patterns.
One thing hasn't changed for the state's second deer season since CWD detection. Game and Fish still needs the public's help to manage the disease.
We need a lot more information to manage this properly, and we can't possibly go out and collect all the samples we need on our own, so we really depend on the participation of our hunters.
Game and Fish staff will be operating voluntary deer check stations in each of the 11 counties in the CWD management zone during the opening weekend of modern gun season this fall. They'll take samples to test for CWD and give hunters a number that can be checked later to find out if their deer tested positive. Hunters also can help by complying with regulations designed to help prevent the spread of CWD.
One of the most important things hunters can do to help us with the management of chronic wasting disease is to not move carcasses or potentially infected material outside of the CWD management zone. So anyone who harvests an animal within the zone, we ask that they go ahead and debone their meat and leave the brain, the spinal cord, and the bones and all of those materials inside the zone, and just bring the deboned meat, finished taxidermy products, things like that, out of the zone.
Many questions about CWD remain for both wildlife managers and hunters. Among the state's hunters, one of the most common questions centers on the safety of eating deer or elk. The Federal Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recommends not consuming animals that have tested positive or CWD.
We certainly defer to their expertise in this area, and they recommend testing animals if you know you're hunting in a CWD positive zone. So we have created as many opportunities for hunters as possible to make that easy and simple and to get results back to them as quickly as possible. So if you're in the zone, we have lots of options, but even if you're outside the zone and you would feel better having your animals tested, we have veterinarians and taxidermists around the state who are participating in those efforts, and all of the information for where you can get your deer sampled is available at arkansascwd.com.
Arkansas Wildlife presents the Watch and Win giveaway. During each episode of Arkansas Wildlife, we'll give away an Arkansas resident hunting and fishing license, a $35.50 value provided by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Visit the Arkansas Wildlife webpage at arkansaswildlife.com and click on the Watch and Win icon to enter. This week's winner is Will Russell from Conway. Congratulations and thanks for watching.